Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 157.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? Entrepreneur Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? Hello there, power parents. Guess who? Mary Catherine Johnson here. You know that. But you don't know who I'm talking to today. And I got to tell you, this is a gentleman I've had on the show before. And you can go back to parententrepreneurssuccess.com/PEP 049. Yes, number 49. That's how long ago he and I talked on the podcast. We've talked a lot since then. Welcome to the conversation, Joel Lewis. He is the founder of Webinar Production. Hey there, Joel. How you doing?
I'm good, Mary. Thank you for having me back on the show. I'm so honored to be speaking to you, and we were just talking like earlier this week, and to your audience, of course, to the parent entrepreneur power out there.
Yes, the power parents love it, definitely. I'm really, like I said, guys, Joel and I basically keep in touch here and there. If there's something I'm working on, and I think he can give me some great advice on it, I contact him. And if there's something he's working on and he wants to chat with me about it, he contacts me. And, you know, that's what networking is about. We just keep in touch with the people who touch us and the people with whom we connect. And Joel is one of those guys. So I'm so grateful to have you in my life, Joel, really, because you and I we've kind of gone through quite a few things together, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Because Power Parents, Joel and I met, and if you want to go back and listen to number 49, and actually I'm just published 149 this week, the week we're talking.
Nice.
So it was a while ago, definitely. But if you want to go back and listen to that, you can hear Joel's once upon a time story, like we typically start this whole thing. But I'm not going to go over that again because Joel's had some pretty exciting things going on in his life, and he's really changed his business model and changed up what he does. And so I really wanted to share with you his expertise and the lessons he's learned. So the way Joel and I first met was when he started his podcast, his first podcast called Startup Dad HQ. I'm sure you can tell what that's about. It's perfect. The name Startup Dad Headquarters. And since then, he's now, like I introduced him, Webinar Production. So Joel, take us through just that part of your path from Startup Dad HQ, from starting that up to now where you are with Webinar Production. And just give us a quick little synopsis of that journey and what happened, what led to each different thing.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I should have asked you this before we started. Do you have the date of that episode 49?
Good question. I do not, but I can find it. It was probably early 2014 or probably, you know, early to, well, no, I'm sorry. It should have been toward the end of 2014.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that was a long time. So 2015 was insane. So start of that, you guys could go listen to the episode 49 and get kind of like the backstory. But a synopsis is that I launched a podcast. And one of the things that I did in terms of, I guess, a mistake is that I launched a podcast without actually having a business model, like a business structure. And, you go through these processes, you go through this journey, as I like to say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I had to go through the steps to realize the error of my ways. And after launching a podcast, I was excited about it. It was great. 144 episodes into it because I was doing a lot more frequent episodes per week than you are, Mary. Mm-hmm. And then when it was time to actually put the business model together, it was very, very difficult. Although I was getting, tons of buzz, tons of listeners to the podcast, growing my list, getting Facebook fans, it was very difficult to pinpoint what exactly the startup dads wanted, and then also what they were willing to pay for. What I learned quickly was that a lot of my listeners were dads, obviously, but they were working 9 to 5. They didn't actually have a business. They were looking to start a business, or they tried and they failed. So anything that I was going to provide them, and for me to get kind of paid monetarily, was going to come from their 9 to 5 income. And a lot of situations where I would have a lot of conversations with dads who were like really strapped. So it was a very tough challenge. And I had a whole bunch of personal stuff going on at the same time. I left Intel, or I like to say Intel left me, because they shut down the site where I was working at for 14 years. My kids have medical issues. So there was a whole bunch of things going on. And at the beginning of 2016, I had a guest on my show who talked about the book E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And right away, I picked it. It was the first time I ever heard about that book. And right away, I picked it up and I read it. I listened to it on audio, then I read it. And it made me realize, all the things that I was doing wrong, which we could probably get into later on. But I realized that I needed to, one, build a business, have a foundation, have a structure, have a business model. And then also I needed to build a business where I'm not the one doing everything, which was the case with Startup Dad Headquarters. And from that, and from the whole journey, as we were talking before we started, into this journey for me has been really since early 2013. It kind of really got fired off from WDS, the conference WDS, in mid 2013. Before that, I was just straight up corporate guy. And so throughout that whole journey, I learned a whole bunch of things. And out of that came what I'm doing right now, which is webinar productions, which I think we were talking earlier this week. I have another service that I just recently launched, and things are doing really, really great.
Yes. So go back and tell us what WDS stands for, just for those who don't know.
Yes, World Domination Summit. Domination Summit.
Before that, you were total corporate guy. So what in the world made you go from Intel corporate guy 14 years to attend World Domination Summit?
Yeah, it was really the and I heard someone else mentioning this, and I think people are starting to realize the possibilities that are out there, right? Because of online and all the jobs that have been created from the technology that's been invented. And people are starting to realize, well, if Intel, in my case, if Intel is willing to pay me 6-figure salary for what I do, can I actually generate 6 figures on my own and more? Right? What can I generate for myself? Because obviously they're going to pay me within their budget and all this kind of stuff. But for me, how can I cut out the middleman in essence, right? Mm-hmm. And add value to someone or something or some company where they pay me directly and I profit from that. So that was really what kind of started it for me. And then having my first child in 2008, actually, it even started even now that I think about it, even in 2008, one of the things that kind of sparked for me was that I had taken a sabbatical and my first daughter was born. So I had 2 months sabbatical with my first daughter, taking care of her. And when I went back to work, I was like, this sucks. I got like this, because I was stuck at work and I wanted to be with my daughter and I wanted the flexibility. And I'm a super hard worker. So it wasn't like I didn't want to work. I just want to stay home or anything like that. It was just like, how do I build that flexibility to be around and be present with my first daughter? And now we have 3 children. So.
See, and that's obviously you hit on the point of why we talked originally, and also how you started your podcast. I mean, it's all about being able to juggle this whole life that includes family and business. So yeah, we all can relate to that part, definitely. And going back to work sucks, definitely. But now, so that was the beginning of it. Then you started to expand your mind and thought, well, World Domination Summit. And of course, the name itself is incredible, right?
Right. Right.
And so finding out that you have more power than you thought, that you really can create your own domination of your own life. You don't have to be beholden to someone else for a paycheck. However, Intel may have been providing your paycheck, but now your clients do that. So I like you say, I agree. I would much rather get rid of that middleman and speak directly to the clients and service them directly myself.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then you Startup Dad, and then you went through this whole journey, didn't really have a business model for Startup Dad. And then finally, when you interviewed someone and they kind of gave you that model to look at and to be able to look at your business and go, oh, darn, I kind of did this bass backwards kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you started applying business model concepts to Startup Dad and realized either they were asking you for something you didn't want to provide, or they weren't even asking you for anything, or what you wanted to provide they didn't want or weren't asking you for. Which one was it?
It was, that's a great question. It was like what I was offering, they just couldn't afford. It's like they couldn't afford. It seems from what I got is that they couldn't afford what I was offering based on the situation. Like I talked to one dad, for example, and this is one out of many, but like I think they eventually sold their house. So they were in very tight financial constraints, and they eventually sold their house, unfortunately, because of, he had tried, I think, one or two businesses and was unsuccessful, which part of my story here is that challenge of trying to find the right fit. But like I said, I went in it with the wrong mindset. I was kind of following the whole John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur Fire, and I'm gonna turn my podcast into a business and all this kind of stuff. So
yeah. And we've got it. That's a really important point, and no knocks against John Lee Dumas or anybody else, but Power Parents, please hear this. And I think that Joelle and I will both agree with this statement. And that is, you cannot turn, quote, your podcast into a business. Even John Lee Dumas didn't do that. He was interviewing entrepreneurs. Interviewing entrepreneurs is not his business. Most of his business came from Podcaster's Paradise, which is the service he provided to other people who wanted to start a podcast. So he wasn't making $200,000 an episode, $500,000 an episode because of advertisers on his show. He was making that by the service he created for other podcasters. So even John Lee Dumas, the subject of his podcast is not his business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I'm not the subject of my podcast, Parent Entrepreneur Success, is not my business, except for the fact that I do consult people personally on being able to create parent entrepreneur success. So in that sense, yeah, my podcast can be considered my business, and I don't supply ads or anything like that as revenue. So no matter what you do, you have to look at it as what kind of service am I providing? And I got to ask you this, Joelle. Both you and I have been involved in the whole, quote, online business atmosphere. And you and I have basically switched ourselves a little bit from that, quote, online business atmosphere. And what I mean by that is we are not setting up some online course and just using it as residual income and going off to the beach. Right? We're still providing service and actually working in our business day to day. So do you, and you've worked with some pretty high powered people, and you can mention those people yourself, but do you feel that many of the people that you've talked to come into this and talk to us about online business with that in mind, with that whole idea of residual online income as being easy. You just go put something up and you sell it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And now I have two answers to that. Well, one answer and then also a backstory of how I arrived at another reason why I arrived where I am now. And what I'm seeing, and maybe I'm sure you've seen the same thing, is that a lot of the successful folks who are doing online business initially started, like, for example, Jamie Masters, who formerly known Jamie Tardy, who I worked for actually most of 2015, which also helped me get to where I am right now.
And that's Jamie Tardy. I'm sorry to interrupt you, just to make sure everybody knows. Eventual Millionaire.
Yes,
is her whole brand.
Yes, and
So,
Jamie, for example, started offline. She started with the one-on-one coaching. Another successful entrepreneur, Jason Swank, he started with a actual agency, like an actual brick and mortar and all this kind of stuff agency. Now he was doing web related work, but he started with an agency and he was providing a service. Same thing with Jamie. And then eventually from the success of that service, so now Jason, he had a successful agency. He sold the agency for multi-million-dollars, and now he helps other agencies. And he does that with online services like courses and group memberships and these other things. Same thing with Jamie. She started with one-on-one coaching and then got, amazing success stories and super successful. And now it's like, okay, how do I scale this business even further? And a good way to scale it is to do online services where you could do one-to-many, where she still does she still does one-to-one. And same thing with Jason, but there's not residual, but the passive side, if you want to call it passive, is online courses and services. So I have seen that as a pattern of people. You do have the special snowflakes, if you will, that would go straight online, and they're able to do it, and they're able to grow this massive list and all this kind of stuff. But I think the pounding the pavement, as Jamie likes to say, pounding the pavement, doing the kind of grunt work, figuring it out, starting with the one-on-one or, local or whatever the case may be, and then eventually scaling it to, this full online thing, or a hybrid of online and still one-on-one, I think is what I'm seeing a lot of. Now that I've opened my eyes and I made my own mistakes, now I'm starting to see, oh, okay, this is really how it works.
Yeah, because we all ate the wonderful dessert that we were served, with everyone telling us, just go online, just put up a course, just do a webinar, just. And we ate it. We followed it. We just went, yeah, I've got a skill. I know what I can do. I'll just put up a course, or I'll just offer this, or I'll just whatever. And you're right. There are a few special snowflakes that might have worked, that they may have hit a specific nerve at a specific time. But the vast majority of us, and I'm including myself in that, I did the same thing 2013, some of 2004, most of 2014, and then wised up in 2015. Right? I woke up and went, all right, what the heck is going on here? And so many of us look at ourselves and think, what are we doing wrong? What is it about me that's not working? And that's not the case, people. Right. It's nothing about you. It's business. It's actual business practices.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like for me, to the second part of that question, my response to that question is that I kind of, now looking back again, is that the other mistake that I made was that if you go back and listen to the episode 49, I believe I'm pretty sure I talked about Dan Miller's book, 48 Days to the Work You Love.
Right.
Which was the book that I spent the time to figure out what are my strengths and all this kind of stuff, and what are the things that I'm really passionate about. Well, one of the things that came out of that was that I'm a techie. Like, I love technology. I like to tell people, hey, you give me a device and in 10 minutes, I'll show you some things you can do on the device that you never knew that you could do on it. I just love technology, and it just comes to me naturally. But at the time when I was looking at what am I going to build and create and offer service, and I'm also kind of like a jack of all trades kind of guy. I was like, well, how am I going to offer a service that's technology related? Like, I was even thinking about creating something for dads where it's all about like technology for your kids. And like, I was trying to tie this all together. But then at the end, I said, well, you know what? There's no way I'm going to make money off of my technology, knowledge and skills, and the fact that I'm a jack of all trades. So I decided to just focus straight on dad and starting business and entrepreneurship and all this kind of stuff. And again, it seemed more sexy and more lucrative, if you will. Like, I'm going to launch an online course. I'm going to do a podcast, get tons of downloads, and then I'm going to do a course. But the mistake I made there was not really listening to what the book was telling me, like listening to what I had written down, listening to the reflection that I did to realize this is what my core in me, this is what I'm good at, and this is what brings me a lot of passion. And a year and a half later, this is this is what I'm doing, and how that came out was that I started working for Jamie Masters, who we talked about earlier, about Eventual Millionaire. In early 2015, I took a course by her called Millionaire Hustlers, and then
that's where we met.
Is that where we met? Okay.
That's where we met. Got it. Sorry. Yeah. I took we were trying, I'm sorry, Power Parents, to interrupt, but we were trying to figure out where we met and how we had known each other for so long. And that's it. But not because I took the same course at the same time. I took her first course, which was late 2014.
Yes.
And then you took it 15. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Sorry to interrupt your story. But anyway, Millionaire Hustlers, go for it. 2015.
Yeah, so I took the course early 2015, and then at the end of 2015, towards the end, like around August, she reached out to me, her and Kendra, and asked me, hey, would I be willing to do some work for them? So I started working for them, and that went from like 5 hours a week to 20 hours a week. And it essentially became me being like a jack of all trades for her and her business, doing everything from landing pages to webinars, moderating webinars, setting up webinars, website stuff, anything you could think about, basically running an online business that could go wrong or you need to implement, funnels, all this kind of stuff. And from there, after working with her for a year, I realized, I'm really good at this stuff. I'm learning this stuff really, really quickly. It was great exposure because I was able to see the behind the scenes of a successful business. Mm-hmm. And I saw a need from the people she was serving with regards to technology. And that's when I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to launch this webinar production service where I basically do all the tech stuff related to setting up a webinar, and people wouldn't have to worry about it. And I decided to focus specifically on that niche, webinar specifically, as opposed to kind of like jack of all trades technology guy. Mm-hmm. And I launched that in March of 2016. And that's pretty much how, by June, I hit my first 5-figure month. And things have been going amazing from there.
Hallelujah. Yes. So see that, Power Parents, that's exactly what we're talking about. So we drank the Kool-Aid, right? We went ahead and bought into the whole online thing. Then it kind of took us in another turn and made some mistakes and realized, well, you actually do have to have an actual business, not just put up some courses and hope somebody buys them. And then and I have to stress this because I know that Joelle will agree with me, that taking that course or having Jamie, her Millionaire Hustlers is more of a mastermind group. It's not a one-on-one coaching or consulting or mentoring, but it's her mentoring a group of people. And we bought that. We spent money on ourselves. And I know you've heard it many times. You've heard it. And you just look at yourself and go, how can I do that when I have to pay my bills and I have to do this and that and the other thing? And let me tell you, in order for me to do that, I had to sacrifice something because it was not cheap. And I did not just have an extra, couple $1,000s sitting in my savings account that I wasn't doing anything with and didn't have earmarked for something to just go blow on a course. So please find a way and make sure it's someone you connect with and value and you've listened to for a certain amount of time, that they speak to you, they resonate with you. And believe me, it will be worth it. Wouldn't you agree, Joel?
Absolutely. Listen, it was the thing that I remember saying to, because at the time I was still working at Intel, and I told, now, I had close coworkers and I would share with them like my journey and everything like that. And I remember saying, and I went to my HR department, made sure like everything that I was doing was like clear, because, it's a large corporation, right? So you don't want to do anything. So I would talk to my coworkers, and I remember when I made that investment, I said, wow, this is the single largest investment I've ever made or I'm going to make in this business, at the time. And it was like, it was just under $1,000, right?
Yeah, right.
For 12 weeks?
Yeah.
So it's not like a year lifetime membership.
Nope.
It was $9.97 for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was a massive investment. Because again, I was funding this through my 9 to 5.
Right.
But I think, when I thought about Startup Dad, because I was a manager at Intel, my wife is a NICU nurse. So we were doing well financially. So I just assumed, well, all dads are gonna, they're gonna be able to invest in what I'm offering, So that was one of the things mistakes that I made. So with for the power parents out there, one of the things I did completely different with webinar production than I did with Startup Dad. Like Startup Dad, I had a beautiful website created, took months figuring out the name, like all this kind of crazy stuff. Like, and I'm such a perfectionist. And like, I feel like everything needs to be perfect from day one. Like my podcast took forever to launch. Webinar production, I had the idea. I gave it a name, webinar production, within like, I don't know, a matter of minutes or so. I purchased, actually, I didn't purchase the name. I didn't purchase any software. I didn't purchase anything. I didn't even purchase the domain name. And all I did was create a mind map of what the service is going to look like. And it was a vision. I spent some time making the mind map look kind of pretty. And I just started reaching out to people. I wasn't going to do anything else until I had money in the bank. And I knew I could figure it out, like how the pieces were going to work technology wise. And I had contacted a couple of webinar companies to figure out which company I would go with to use for part of the service. Because, what I offer, it comes with the webinar platform. And I just started reaching out to people, cold calling people. I mean, not cold messaging people on Facebook, literally finding people, searching, just doing a Google search for webinar, finding who was doing webinars, kind of stalking them on their website and seeing what they were providing and offering, and that it connected with me and it wasn't like something that was against my values. And I just messaged them right in Facebook. And I launched in end of March. And when I say launch, I'm just talking about like I just started doing this search, and I had my first client in I had my first 2 clients in like the first week of April. And then I just kept going. I went like that until I don't think I got the domain name and a website until, and I told you I had my first 5 figures in June. I think the website came up in August, September, and then I got the webinarproduction.co because .com was taken.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and I got to tell you, I remember that process because I know you and I chatted about that right when you were first starting it. And you shared with me kind of your mind map and kind of your services flow and what it is you were offering. And you basically were saying, I haven't really talked about this at all yet. And I don't have a website. I don't have anything up. I've just talked to some clients. I've got my first 2 clients. I mean, I remember that happening.
yeah,
And I was so proud of you because I remember the perfection of Startup Dad, right? I mean, I remember that. And I know because I went through it too. I can't tell you how many times I tweaked my website and just, well, let's change this. And I mean, since way back 2003 when I first started Mommy Loves, I did that. I mean, just as something to do if money wasn't coming in, right? Thinking I can just change this and I can change that, and it's nuts stuff. Yeah, I mean, and I'm absolutely nutty in that respect, or it used to be at least, not anymore. Just like you though, and what an amazing thing! And Power Parents, please, again, you can learn so much from Joel. Please, it will save you years, right? A year and a half. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing that I learned, and I decided not to. And I'm a very logical kind of guy, even though I kind of started Startup Dad, kind of crazy. Looking back now, I thought I was doing the right thing. But I really analyze and try to learn from my mistakes. And I think that's really what it is about, when you think about failure, because you could look at Startup Dad and say, it was a failure. I spent a ton of money, but all this podcast equipment, but podcasting lights and a whole bunch of stuff. But I learned a whole bunch. And one of the things that I learned was that I need a coach. So right away, within the first couple of weeks once I validated that there was actually people who wanted this thing, there was actually money sitting in my bank account from the client, I started searching for a coach. And I wrote down my criteria for a coach. So for example, one of the big criteria was I wanted someone who was, because I knew I wanted to build an agency. And it was just starting off with the webinars, but I knew long-term vision, I wanted to be an agency, and I wanted someone who had familiarity with an agency, either owned or they had clients who owned agencies. I wanted someone who was a dad. It could have been a mom as well. That would have been fine, but someone who was a parent, someone who was Christian, because I am. So I had specific, someone I resonate with. I had some really, and I didn't want a coach who was going to, like I told you earlier, I think earlier this week or last time we spoke, was I didn't want someone who was just going to ask me a billion questions for me to figure it out myself. Right. I wanted someone who was really willing to invest and help me grow and scale my business. So kind of an implementation coach, and someone who would kick my butt. All right.
Right. Someone, if you asked a question, they would give you their opinion on what you should do.
Right, exactly.
Based on their experience.
Yes. And I found that coach, and I've been, talking about spending money that you don't necessarily have. I know the pain with that. So spending the money we spent on Millionaire Hustlers, spending the money on a coach. It was, he's not the priciest coach, but it's $750 a month.
Wow.
Right? So it's if you think about Millionaire Hustlers, which was $997 for 12 weeks, I'm now spending $750 a month, but it's a game changer.
Yes.
Game changer having him. And then I also spent money on hiring an assistant, which was a third mistake that I made with Startup Dad, which, I was doing everything myself.
Right.
And by having an assistant, I'm able to actually focus on the things that I need to focus on in business, scaling the business, marketing the business, growing the business. And work is still being done while I'm on this podcast with you,
right. Right.
So just a lot of mistakes, and just really trying to learn from those mistakes and not make them again,
Oh my goodness, yes. And I second every single one of those things because I too have done exactly the same thing. Hired a coach, hired an assistant, gone beyond hiring just one assistant and hiring another assistant. And actually, I don't really call them assistants. I really call them part of my team. They are team members. Because it is vital. It really, yeah. And I was exactly the same way, doing everything myself, not just because of my ego thinking nobody can do it as well as I can, but because for me, I didn't think I could afford it. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it takes money to make money. It really
Yeah.
does.
It
And
does.
I kept trying to bootstrap and trying to do it from the bottom up myself. And I'm telling you, that is a valuable skill to be able to do that. But you have to hit that critical point when you realize you can't grow if you don't let
Right.
go.
Yes.
I'm going to coin that phrase. You can't grow unless you let go. Oh, I love it.
Love it. I love it.
No, it's just because that's what we both experienced, and I love it, Joel. I just so love when someone resonates, and I think that's the reason you and I get along well is because same thing. Tech people do it ourselves. Jack of all trades. We can figure anything out that you put in front of me. I can figure it out. And that is a skill, but it's also the flip side of that. The other side of that coin is it's a hindrance, right? It's comfortable. We always fall back to it because it's comfortable. And doing all this other stuff, hiring coaches, spending money, hiring assistants, and handing over jobs is not as comfortable as what we've known how to do. So now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, right in line with that is hire. Now you think about hiring an assistant, and you want to think, and we all obviously, I'm assuming a lot of the power parents out there either have a 9 to 5 or they've worked a 9 to 5. And for me, like, because I had two situations with when I started the business, I had a VA company, and that didn't work out well. That VA company didn't work out well because, and thank goodness I had a coach who made me realize I got the coach. I got the coach after I had the VA company, and I spent like $1,400 on the VA company. The last $700 I spent, I got the coach in between that. And what he made me realize was that, hey man, listen, when you got hired by Intel, it took you 6 months, a year to really learn and figure things out and follow their system and get to know their applications before you were off and running. And so when you hire an assistant, you have to realize that you're going to have to, one, make sure your systems are in place, which when you think about techies like you and I, you think, man, why spend the time recording these videos? Why spend the time recording these videos, training someone when I could just do this thing in 5 minutes? Oh, yes. Something that would take you 5 minutes, the video may be 15 minutes because you're going into more details and you're explaining all the behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. But you have to realize, like, you have to spend the time to do that. You have to invest into your training, your assistant, because like you said, you got to spend the money and you got to spend the time in order to grow your business. And that's another key point as well. And now my assistant, now that I've built SOPs, man, she's off and running and just amazing.
Yes. I learned that first lesson with hiring my own son, because I had to basically outline my entire podcast production schedule and everything, how I produced my own podcast. And I did all that with my screen flow and the whole bit, and just did the whole, as I opened up and started to produce a podcast, I recorded myself through the whole process. And then as I changed things, I had to go back to that recording and change it because, through time, I did things a little bit differently and adapted and all that stuff. So even though he was on board doing it, I had to go back and change that and have him go back and rewatch the things that I'd changed.
Right.
So yeah, it is vital. Oh my goodness. Yes. And so now take us through, thank you for going through that for me, because Power Parents, please, it will save you so much heartache, so much money, so much time, so much stress. if you do the things that Joelle was just talking about. So now take me through March to now and webinar production, and how have you been getting the word out, and then the website. And I know, because one of the things that surprised me when we talked last is that you don't have an email list for this. This isn't the same kind of business that your startup dad was. So take me through that, and why did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, it's part of it was that I had to realize I had to look at what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses is that whole perfection. And I had to go so against the grain. Like, okay, this didn't work. I need to do a complete 180 so that the next thing that I approach and I tackle, I'm not the one holding it back. And I could learn, I could test, and I could learn, test, fail, or succeed quickly, and then move on to another thing. The other thing was that, I had, like I said, Intel closed down. So, we had a pretty good runway financially, but it was about March would have made a year, very close to a year that I was out of work, because Intel closed down April of 2015. So March would have been about a year, and it was getting very, very tight. I had about, I think my wife and I did the math, and it was like, okay, you have, they say that it takes you about 4 to 6 months to find a job that you really like. So my window was based on, okay, if this doesn't work in March, if I don't have something working in March, I have 6 months of income, right, before things get crazy, for me to find a job. So it was almost like the pressure was on. Like I was at the end of my rope, literally. So that was another thing that I said, Joelle, you can't be a perfectionist. You have to really, you have to really go against the grain, your normal grain, and really hone in on this. So I launched webinar production. And what I started to do, like I said, is just reach out to people, one like cold calling or cold Facebook messaging to find clients. And
can I ask you something about that real quick?
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned going to looking at people and just kind of cold sourcing people. So you started just doing searches on people who are conducting webinars. And you went to their websites and saw, how big they looked like they were, how often they were doing webinars, what they were doing their webinars for. And then how did you determine which people you wanted to contact? Or did you just start contacting? Because I know desperation definitely is a very strong motivator.
Yes.
But did you have any criteria? Like, these guys look like they're too big, or this guy looks like he's too small. I mean, how did you do that?
Absolutely. Great question. Yeah, although I had definitely the pressure on my back, I still had to be very methodical, and I did have to, I knew this, but from working with Jamie and all this kind of stuff, I still identified who are my ideal clients. And my ideal client in this case is one, I wanted to, with Startup Dad, it was kind of business to consumer. Whereas with this, I wanted it to be business to business. So I wanted someone who was a business owner. And they were doing this full time. They did not have a 9 to 5. And some of the criteria was like their product, whatever product or service that they're offering, somewhere in the range of like 500 to 1,000 or more per purchase, right? So that was kind of like, because my webinar service is not necessarily inexpensive. And so I had to make sure that the folks that were purchasing, if they were doing a webinar with me, they could quickly do the math and say, oh, well, if I have 1 sale or 2 sales, it would, my return on investment will be covered. Or I'll have my return on investment. The other thing was like how much traffic they would get into their website. So I have a little on Chrome, Google Chrome, there's a little Chrome extension you could have that tells you, and I can send this to you in a link, or the name of it. There's a little Chrome extension that shows you how much traffic each website gets. So if they were getting a lot of traffic, it's a little icon, and it shows from 0 to 10. So for example, just as a reference point, I think like Pat Flynn, I think a lot of power parents will know Pat Flynn. He was on episode 100, maybe on other episodes as well, right? He gets about like a 6 out of that 0 to 10. So he gets a lot of traffic. Someone like that wouldn't be in my is not ideal client, because he most likely has a team, or he most likely has a technical person on their team, or they most likely have a marketing person on the team, or he has contractors. So I need someone who's kind of in the space of they're making money and they're ready to go to that next level. They're scaling to that next level.
Right.
They may have a general VA, like an admin, but that admin is not necessarily a tech person.
Right. And Power Parents, just to let you know, one of the tools I use for that is called the Moz bar. It's Moz, M-O-Z, and it's a Chrome extension. Moz bar. Anyway, go.
Yeah, and I would look at their Facebook fan page to see how much likes they have, followers they have on their fan page. All those kind of things will tell me either yes or no. If it was too many, it'd be no. If it's less than 20,000, I would like, okay, maybe they're a good fit. If it's too low, then it's like, they probably can't afford their service.
Right.
So there was definitely a strategic play on who I targeted and stuff like that. So.
Awesome. Good. So there you go, Power Parents. There's a couple of ways you can target that and figure that out, and make sure that, as Joel did, he knew his service. He knew how much he needed to charge for it. And then he was able to find those people that would fit into that narrow window of needing his service and being able to afford it. Yes. Then all he had to do was go show them that he could do it and be able to sell himself that, hey, I can do it. And you had to have a little bit of social proof ahead of time, or at least a little bit of proof. So Jamie, I'm sure, provided some of that for you, I would assume.
Yeah, from the work that I was doing with Jamie, and then from her audience, seeing that people were struggling so much with webinars, like having glitches, technical issues, all this kind of stuff. And I was doing that for Jamie, where I'm the guy behind the scenes, kind of turning the knobs, and everything is running smoothly. So that was kind of like a sense of, okay, there's a need, there's a pain in the market for this thing. Now it's time to find out whether is it a big enough pain where people will actually pay for it. Now, you mentioned the pricing. I've actually increased my prices 4 times since the time I've launched this, and I've changed the service tiers. If you go, like, if someone went to a website, you can see like the grid. That's changed. I'm so trial and error right now. It's like I started with relatively low. Like, for example, when I first started, I had a 1 webinar package, which was like $397 for 1 webinar. I quickly learned that was not profitable at all, because the first webinar takes so much time to set up. Right. So then I realized, okay, I got to do 3 webinars minimum, right? And I think at the time it was $697 for 3 webinars.
You mean for all 3?
All 3.
Not 6 per, but all 3 of them.
All 3 of them.
Wow.
Exactly. And I'm moderating the webinars, right? So I'm on the call. It's usually for each webinar, I block out 2 hours of my time for each webinar. So that's 6 hours total for the $697 of my time of sitting there, not to mention the strategy call before, the strategy call after, setting everything up. So
that's still not enough, because let's do that. That's $697. Then you're only making $100 an hour just for your time
for moderating. But then there's all this other stuff. So it was way less than $100 an hour when you looked at the whole thing.
Right.
Then but it allowed me to test and see that there's a need for this. And I went back to I have one client, for anybody who's afraid of like starting at a low price or the wrong price, and then like having a client locked in. And 2 of my clients who were on the $697 package, when I increased my prices the third time around, I went to them and I said, hey, listen, my prices are going up. I forgot exactly the words that I used, but I said, hey, my prices are going up, and here are the new prices. And they jumped right on it. they jump. Actually, one of my clients was like, your prices should be 3 times what what it is right now.
They were probably feeling bad in the background going, dang, I got this for a steal.
Exactly. So, if you're afraid that you're gonna start with the wrong price and like you're gonna lose money or get locked in, no. Those 2 clients, they now pay $9.97 for 2 webinars. $9.97 for 2 webinars. So every 2 webinars is.
And I got it here again. Oh my goodness. It just all fits together because first off, I have to say, now you can use your perfectionist skills to their greatest benefit.
Exactly.
Right? Because we want somebody on the back end who is a perfectionist. Yeah, but you don't need it for your website. Right? Okay. And then secondly, those clients who were glad to pay that extra amount already saw what amazing benefit you brought to their business. So they wouldn't be able to pay the $9.97 for 2 webinars unless each of those webinars brought them at least $9.97 or more each.
Yes, exactly. And you could, if the Power Parents, I think you said you'll have the links and stuff like that to the website, but if the Power Parents, if you do link it up, they could go and they could see the testimonials. My like you said, the perfectionist side of things, like when you find that thing that you just love doing and it resonates with you, and you offer that as a service to someone else, man, it's powerful because I have those same 2 clients. They're the type of people like just ship it, just get it out there. They don't care about perfectionists or anything like that. So they just love the fact that I'm looking at those things, and I of course I make sure that I don't allow my perfectionism to delay me on the delivery of the product and the service and stuff. I actually use that to hold them accountable, to stay on timeline, to stay on track, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a perfect mix.
Yay. And I have to say this because you are now, and so you're well beyond 5 figures a month.
Correct.
Yeah. So are you talking high 6 figures, low 6 figures?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still in the 5-figure range.
Right. In that range. Yeah. Right. So, but I have to break everybody's bubble. And like we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, and just kind of bring it back full circle and see that Joel is not putting up a course and trying to teach people how to do webinars. He's actually providing the service of conducting the entire webinar from start to finish, and even before start, understanding the client. So it's a very labor-intensive, time-intensive process. And this is what he does, but it's the online part is how he connects with people and how he actually performs the services online. But it's not an online business that we all think of, that you just put up a course and you make money. It's not affiliate marketing. It's not any of those kinds of things. It's actual work, and you're providing a service. This is, Power Parents, this is the way business has been conducted for centuries.
Right.
It's no difference just because we have the internet. You still have to provide a service that people need. I am so turned off of online courses now, Joel. I can't even tell you. I will not take another online course, unless it's something that really is very, very, very specific. Like if I needed to learn Scrivener, okay, the writing software, then I would go to Joseph Michael and go hire the Scrivener coach. Right? Yeah. That I would do. But if it's an online course on how to start a business or how to make your business grow or funnels or email marketing, forget it. I am not going there ever again, right? Because that's not what I need. We need to provide services for people. This is still people helping people.
Right.
That's it. Yay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. People helping people. And I'm with you 100%. I mean, the courses I buy now is either something specific to what I want to learn, or I'm stalking somebody, right? Like I obviously I'm offering a webinar service, so I want to see what these, I purchased what's his name, David Siteman Garland.
Yes,
I purchased his webinar course, right? Like just to see, okay, what are his things, what are his strategies? Because I offer strategy to my clients, so it's good to learn and figure out what people are doing, what's working. Frank Kern, I'm in Frank Kern's inner circle. which is very expensive. But he has this whole webinar blueprint and all this kind of stuff. So, it's more of a strategic play to kind of stalk people and learn what they're doing and that kind of stuff. But yeah, in terms of like online courses that I've spent like, oh my goodness, tons of money on. I'm not doing that, and to kind of go back to finishing answering your question from earlier was like, I'm not doing the email list and all this kind of stuff because I realize, and my coach helped me realize, again, another reason why having a coach is amazing. My coach is big on the DISC analysis, personality analysis, and one of the things that we realized was like, I'm not the guy that's going to create the crowd. Like, I've never been the guy that's going to create a magnet. The crowd is going to come to me like a magnet. And I don't want to nurture a list. Like, that's not me. I don't want to do that. In time, I may hire a team and have them do that kind of stuff. But that's not what brings me energy. And so, we talked about strategically, if I'm not going to build a list, if I'm not going to grow the list, then what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is create a referral program, an amazing referral program, and then reach out to people who have a list and say, hey, here's this amazing referral program that I have. And here's what I offer. Here's the testimonials. You can see that I offer, a great service. And I'll take care of your clients and your referrals and grow the business that way. Because referrals is really, in terms of marketing, I very rarely do the Facebook thing anymore. Right. I get a lot of referrals. Right now, I'm kind of playing with LinkedIn, kind of seeing what goes on there. But it's really the referral service, the referral commission is how I'm growing the business now.
That's fantastic. Well, Joel, I got to bring this to a close, unfortunately, because we're coming up on almost 55 minutes of talking here, and I know we could go well beyond and talk about so many of the things that you just now mentioned, even. But we've gotta leave something for another day, right? But I just I'm so thankful that we got together again on the podcast and really shared your journey. And obviously we didn't talk about your daughters and how they're doing, I hope well, and how your wife's doing and all of that. Yes. And that's still running and going, and you're still being flexible, and all those things are still happening. But at least now your business is actually a business that is not only providing a service and helping people to people, but it's also bringing amazing opportunities for your family. And that's really what it's all about. So thank you for spending this time with me. Is there any last bit of advice that you would offer to someone sitting out there struggling and say they've tried to start an online course and it hasn't quite gone with the way they want, or they got a few bites here and there, but it's really not sustaining them? And, what advice would you give them? What do you think they can do?
Yeah, what I would say to them is like I mentioned the quote earlier, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And it's really a journey. You have to be ready, because people will look, maybe 5 years from now, hopefully when I have this multi-million-dollar agency, and people will look like and say, wow, in March of 2016, he started, and by June, he was making 5 figures. But that's not the case. The story started in 2008 with like this desire to spend more time with my children, and then learning all this online stuff and going through all these mistakes until in 2008, I tried to do app development, all this kind of stuff. Like there was so many different things that I tried to do and failed until I got to this point. So the journey is really, it's really about sticking to it. Obviously don't put your family in jeopardy or anything like that, but like you got to stick to it and just keep working. Not if you have to sacrifice sleep, whatever you got to do, you got to make it, you got to figure it out and make it happen. So don't give up. Failure is really when you do give up and you just kind of go back to that 9 to 5 and reside yourself to that's what your life is going to be. Just keep pushing and to let the power parents know, like, what we talked about with like eventually going to an online thing. I recently launched a part of my service, which is a recurring income. When I say recent, like 3 weeks ago, and I have 2 clients right now already signed up paying me combined $2,400 every single month for recurring work. So it's moving there, it's getting there, and eventually maybe it becomes more online. But it's all a journey, and once you start to figure it out and work it, you could then figure out how to scale it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So
fantastic. Thank you so much, Joel.
You're welcome, Mary. Thank you for having me on.
To get powered up for your day, just go to parententrepreneur.power.com and listen to any one of the over 100 episodes we've had so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.